So there's something that I've noticed through the years that has perplexed me to no end, and that is how on earth the Liberals have managed to stay in power under such catastrophic mismanagement. I've been paying very close attention to crisis management policy to manage a crisis before it even happens. I've seen Trudeau accomplish things that were well beyond his intelligence level, which always begs the question, if not Mark Carney, if not Justin Trudeau, whom stands behind them? Tonight we're going to talk about relationships, influence, and a system that has been installed to surgically maintain power indefinitely by controlling what you think. And at the end of this, I will summarize how all of you are being duped on an extraordinary scale. First, let's talk about Mark Carney. When he was named the unofficial economic advisor to Justin Trudeau, only about 7% of the population knew who he was. Some people don't even know he was advising Trudeau from 2020 to 2024. The fact of the matter is, Carney's been around for over a decade. He didn't come out of nowhere, he just prefers to operate from the shadows. 2008, 2013, Governor of Bank of Canada, 13 to 20, Governor of Bank of England. Trudeau was doing readouts of Mark Carney as far back as 2015, and in his resignation, he stated that he was trying to recruit Carney to run as leader for years. And this was heavily considered back in 2011, but Carney wanted to stay with the bank, because at the bank, he had his finger on the pulse to global finance. You should also know that Mark Carney's wife, Diana Carney, was also an alumni and probably better connected than Carney. From 2010 to 2013, served Vice President of Research for a progressive, liberal-aligned think tank on energy, environment, and income inequality. She's an important figure later. Now everyone is going to know who you are. Carney is also a foundation board member of the WEF, the World Economic Forum, from 2010 to present day. He is still heavily engaged, and Mark and Trudeau have been at WEF summits together as far back as 2018. They are well known for the Great Reset campaign, which was launched in 2020, stakeholder capitalism, climate and ESG agendas, young globalist leaders. I'll read you a quote later from Klaus Schwab regarding our own government. It's important that I mention this because you remember that figure that's standing behind them? He is also a World Economic Forum young global leader, and he is the man behind the men. As I moved further through Justin Trudeau's tenure, some really contentious points for me were a couple of branches that were created, which were way too sophisticated in what they accomplished for him to have created. This had Mark Carney's fingerprints all over it, because the risk management was surgical. If you don't know about the SNC-Lavalin affair, they've been up on charges of bribery multiple times and breaking election regulations. The Liberal government awarded them 50 major contracts, rammed through a DPA. Trudeau removed the Governor General, who refused to not prosecute them, and during this time they created those two branches, NSICOP, NSIRA. The members of both of these boards are recommendations from the Prime Minister, and NSICOP is not a standard parliamentary committee. It is an agency of the executive. NSICOP basically allows the government to shield all foreign interference from Parliament and from the public, which is why we didn't hear about the Chinese Communist Party interference for 4 years till after it occurred. NSIRA does something completely different and gives the Prime Minister and the Cabinet control and appointments to see classified documents first and then decide what Parliament and the public gets to see. This was sold as transparency and oversight, but it gave a sitting Prime Minister incredible power to conceal information and do damage control. During this tenure, $1.5 million in contracts was awarded to the company owned by the man I'm speaking of. In 2019, Gerald Butts, not the guy, the most powerful unelected official and Trudeau's chief advisor, resigns over the SNC-Lavalin affair and then moves to be vice chair at Eurasia Group. Carney's wife, Diana, becomes an unpaid senior advisor of Eurasia Group in May 2021, sitting next to Trudeau's former chief advisor. Being unpaid means there's no conflict of interest and there is no paper trail. So what is this company and who owns it? The answer to that and what that is connected to will show you exactly why you cannot get the Liberals out of power. Ian Bremmer, World Economic Forum young global leader, founding chair of the WEF's Global Agenda Council on Geopolitical Risk. He is the owner of Eurasia and a subsidiary called G0 Media. What, pray tell, is Eurasia? Motherfucker. Eurasia is a geopolitical macroeconomic risk advisory firm. Trudeau paid them $1.5 million, and Carney has executed at least one contract for over $400,000 so far. What do? Recession risk assessment, political stability implications, market confidence analysis, credit rating consequences, social and electoral risk management. That's a key one. Eurasia Group is one of the most prominent political risk assessment companies in the entire world. So what they do is analyze absolutely everything. And although they can't set policy, they will tell you what needs to change, and it's up to you to adjust the policy to have the right cause and effect. With Diana and Trudeau's former chief advisor, it creates the perfect avenue for Diana to convey to Carney exactly what he needs to do to change your mind. Examples of this exist through his entire platform. Huge budget coming? Eurasia Group has the data and analysis to let Carney know this budget is going to detonate his popularity and his voter presence. This is why you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a barrage of policy dropped just before that budget, which included donations to minorities, Black community, Ukrainians, LGBTQ, bail reform, and several others all in succession. This was the piece of cake before you got the rotten apple. They changed the calculation method for the poverty line to the NBM method, which grossly underestimates the poverty line. That happened in 2018, up to 5 times for major cities. They changed the calculation method for the crime severity index, which grossly underestimates crime severity, up to 22 and 30%, according to some police chief. They tell you that Canada's net GDP ratio is 13%. It's 110% because Canada is the only country that nets off its pension, which is public funds. And just today, they told you the annualized GDP was 2.6%, when in reality, the real GDP growth was 0.6, and 67% of that was due to government spending. And to make matters worse, I've noticed some oddities with polling. Frank Graves, the owner of ECOS, tweeted, which has since been removed but is still in existence, he would do anything in his power to make sure that Pierre would not come into power. Abacus has a contract with G0 Media, that is the subsidiary to Eurasia Group. The government will run focus groups to test words that they will then sometimes use in polling. Government polls are disclosed, private ones are not. Angus Reid, which is another major pollster, produced a private poll very strategically around the budget, which used the phrasing, "Would you be ashamed if Pierre were Prime Minister?" This was surgical timing, and the government is actually not allowed to use that emotional phrasing, which begs the question, who paid for it? In Degrees of Democracy 2010, Stuart Soroka and Christopher Welson demonstrated that citizens in the UK, the US, and Canada adjust their preferences like a thermostat. When they perceive government has moved policy in one direction, they move in the opposite direction. But only if they get clear cues from the media about what actually changed. That is very interesting when you see someone like Carney sometimes distancing himself from green energy, knowing that in his book Values, he stated that climate change was an existential crisis and required mobilization that has not been seen since wartime. The reason why you see this is because a company like Eurasia will assess the damage control of policy, and they will make that adjustment just to stay in power. They are not changing policy for democracy, they are doing it for political risk management, so they can get a majority vote. So let me break this down. Everything you see and hear, every policy that pops up is being dictated and influenced by one of the most prominent technologically advanced political risk companies in the entire world, owned by Ian Bremmer, who founded a board with the WEF doing the exact same thing, who has Mark Carney's wife, Diana, as the senior advisor, who has Trudeau's ex-principal secretary, the most powerful unelected person in the formal government, Gerald Butt, as vice chair, and one of Carney's PMs, Solomon, worked for that subsidiary G0. Abacus feeds directly to the Toronto Star. So what is the main goal of your current Liberal government? Aside from the astronomical amount of conflicts of interest, everything they do is surgically executed to maintain just enough popularity to stay where they are and slowly but surely squeeze you into net zero. If you don't believe me, just acknowledge the fact that Canada has one of the highest immigration levels in the entire world, and the Liberals also reduced citizenship from 5 years down to 3 years. That alone will create enough new voters whom are twice as likely to vote for the leading party to tip an election. Another Eurasia example, taking $4.3 billion from Veteran Affairs, giving $4.3 billion to the Ukraine. Why? There are just over 400,000 veterans. That's your voter demographic. 1.3 million Ukrainians, with up to 1 million of them with voter rights. Bigger demographic. Give them the money, plus that $4.3 billion can be used to pay for reactors for the Ukraine by a company that is owned by Mark Carney's transition fund, which blows his carried interest through the roof yet again. The system that they have in place is absolutely catastrophic. Having that system in place while simultaneously creating pockets of voters everywhere is going to make it very difficult to get them out of office. And if they make us poor enough and introduce general basic income, which I promise you is mathematically impossible under this fiscal landscape, will create the biggest liberal voter base you have ever seen, and you'll never get them out. You might get one chance in a spring election. So Ian Bremmer, Diana Carney, Mark Carney, Gerald Butts, good old Solomon. I know exactly what you're doing, and I have piles of information to prove it.